Tonight on Ukraine Today, strike on Putin's residence. Why did the Kremlin invent this story, and did Donald Trump believe Russia's nonsense? Elections in Ukraine. Will Ukraine get 60 days of silence? An unexpected answer from President Trump. Rising nuclear threats. The Oreshnik missile system has reportedly gone on combat duty in Belarus. Ukraine-Moldova alliance. How and when could Kyiv help Chișinău liberate so-called Transnistria from Russian occupation? All this and more, right now. Hello, I'm Volodymyr Robchun and this is Ukraine Today. Please subscribe, hit the like button and let's get to the news. In a couple of minutes we'll talk about the strike on Putin's residence story. But now, let's start with enemy losses. Over the past day, Russian army lost at least 1,220 troops killed and wounded. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, Russia's total losses have reached 1,206,910 occupiers. In the last 24 hours, Ukraine's defense forces also destroyed 5 Russian tanks, 4 armored combat vehicles, 19 artillery systems and dozens of other pieces of enemy military equipment. Parts of Pole in the Zaporizhzhia region are now under occupiers' control. This was reported by Ukraine's Southern Defense Forces. The situation is extremely difficult. More details from the battlefield in our report.
ADG is under attack by Ukrainian drones. Local authorities are not disclosing details of the attack. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported that 3 fixed-wing drones were allegedly shot down over the region. According to videos published on Telegram channels, the Kanskoy military airfield was hit.
This is in fact a continuation of those strikes. The most heavily protected targets, namely airfields, are exactly such sites, and the fact that in Adygea itself the Russians are unable to hide their aircraft and that the airfield's infrastructure has been hit is a vivid example that the fight should not be against the aircraft themselves, but specifically against their bases. That is precisely where they are most vulnerable.
The raid in Adygea, it seems, is not the only recent blow to Russia's defenses. On December 27th, their TV channel Zvezda published several videos from Ukrainian Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region, a city whose capture the ministry has been claiming since late November. The footage was supposed to confirm Russian control over the city, but in one of the videos, a group of Russian soldiers is actually seen retreating. And this was noticed. Z military correspondents.
This is pressure on our European partners, on the Americans, and also on us, the citizens of Ukraine, to make it seem like things are really bad over there. And they're trying to push the idea that our government is hiding something from us.
There are ways to counter drones or just snow air defense, as our defenders call this video. In it, the occupier, spoiler alert, unsuccessfully tries to shoot down a Ukrainian FPV drone. But in the end, this FPV drone takes down the occupier for good. According to the Southern Defense Forces, part of Pole in the Zaporizhzhia region is under the control of the occupiers. It is noted that the situation is difficult.
Fierce fighting continues there. And this direction is important because it directly leads toward Zaporizhzhia, which is the regional administrative center. The Russians have indeed made several repeated attempts. Throughout this year, they tried to break through to Zaporizhzhia from the south, but there they ran into our well-fortified defensive line. And in fact, by strategically developing their extensive operation from the eastern flank in the Donetsk region, they effectively concentrated a sufficiently large number of their military forces and thus were able to achieve their objectives. They began advancing not from the south anymore, but from the east.
Putin is not aware of what is happening at the front. Moreover, his own generals are deceiving him, according to concerned propagandists.
And the man has absolutely no idea what's going on at the front, not at all, ever since the very beginning of the so-called special military operation.
In fact, that's why, according to your insiders, Putin spouts all the nonsense that he does.
Basically, the general staff is handling things, the general staff is in charge, but now he's started to get involved in matters that accordingly do not reflect reality, including regarding
Putin is a professional KGB officer, a man who receives information from various sources, including let's say, semi-official sources. That is not only, well, not official secrets, so to speak, not just from the generals. And to think that Putin is so stupid and doesn't understand what's going on, that it's just some generals, that they're feeding him lies, and that's why he also spouts nonsense. It's all a planned, clearly orchestrated action.
Well, while Putin's Russian army is disgracing itself, the Ukrainian army is destroying the enemy. For example, here are some shots from the Serebryansky forest, which is located on the Lyman front line. In these shots, Ukrainian FPV drones are destroying the enemy completely and irreversibly.
Ukraine is fighting for freedom. Support independent Ukrainian journalism so we can keep telling the truth about Russia's war. Click the link in the description to become our sponsor. Now's the time to subscribe, like this video and share it, so more people can see it. Thank you, and glory to Ukraine. Ukraine is introducing new missiles and drone systems. All the details, next.
A new level and scale. Ukraine is accelerating the development of its own defense industry and preparing to introduce new artillery, missile and unmanned systems. More than 50% of the weaponry in the Ukrainian army is domestically produced, which not only allows them to destroy the enemy on the front lines, but also to strike deep into Russia.
Today, Ukraine is undeniably one of the leading nations, and I would even confidently say a significant trendsetter, in the advanced production of long-range drones, sophisticated ballistic weapons, precision cruise missiles, and various unmanned aerial vehicles. Well, in some respects, I am, of course, getting ahead of myself, but we can already say that Ukraine has managed not only to scale up its program for the use of aerial strike drones to the level of systematic operations against the rear of the Russian Federation, but also to deploy unmanned boats and maritime drones in the Black Sea, which has completely blocked the Black Sea for the Russian occupiers.
The Ukrainian armed forces are successfully attacking military targets in the Russian Federation. Ukrainian drones have delivered a historic blow to Russia's oil industry, paralyzing 38% of its refineries and creating an unprecedented crisis in the fuel market. Since the start of the full-scale war, Ukraine has ramped up weapons production and the implementation of new technologies, which are already being used on the front lines. The Ukrainian armed forces have begun using domestically produced Sapsan ballistic missiles to strike the enemy. Ukraine has also improved the effectiveness of its Neptune and Flamingo missile strikes. More than 500 Ukrainian companies are involved in the development and production of UAVs. The equipment is tested in combat conditions every day. Ukraine's defense industry can produce up to 8 million drones per year, provided there is sufficient funding. FPV drones, bomb-carrying reconnaissance drones, interceptors, tactical kamikaze drones, and fiber-optic drones.
Russia is significantly lagging behind in this area, while Ukraine is actively developing new types for various purposes, each with different characteristics. And that says a lot. This points to a significantly broader perspective on the extensive technical and advanced technological possibilities for effective solutions within a very specific and crucial component of modern strike capabilities: sophisticated long-range attack drones.
Currently, the number of FPV drones on the Ukrainian side exceeds the number of such drones used by the Russian occupiers. Moreover, Russia has admitted that it is lagging behind Ukraine in the field of heavy drones.
Indeed, as of today, Ukraine is far ahead of Russia when it comes to the use of attack drones. I'll go even further. Ukraine has a whole range of different types of long-range attack drone modifications, which are used under various conditions or in combination. And what is Russia known for in this regard? It is widely known for simply taking and directly copying the Iranian Shahed 136 drone, subsequently renaming it the Garan 2, and then actively using it against Ukraine, occasionally modifying the overall operational concept and its deployment strategies.
The war has become a powerful catalyst for the development of Ukraine's defense industry. The volume of domestic weapons production has increased many times over. Thanks to private companies, Ukraine is able to create innovations in the defense industry and effectively implement them on the battlefield.
Until 2022, we had a very modest military budget. We had limited technology, but nevertheless, thanks to our creativity, we were able to surpass Russia in a number of areas, even though before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Russia in some ways had a much greater, almost unlimited resource compared to us. At present, yes, in a number of missile technologies, we have achieved results that even Russia does not have. Take the Flamingo missile, for example. Even though it is a mobilization type and rather raw product, it already has a base range of 3,000 kilometers.
All this means that Ukrainian developers have demonstrated the ability to create high-precision weaponry capable of destroying important enemy military targets deep behind the lines.
These images help us understand what the so-called Russian world, Ruski Mir, really brings. Ukrainian soldiers showed what the occupiers have done to Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region. Not long ago, it was a living, beautiful city. Russia's war turned it into ruins. And one more example of the so-called Russian world. The occupiers killed 7 civilians in Pokrovsk. This war crime was committed on the night of December 21st. The Russian soldiers broke into the basement of a residential building where civilians were hiding. They demanded alcohol. When it turned out there was none, they shot a father and his son, and later executed the other people in the basement. Among the victims was an entire family. Only one wounded person survived. Russia is preparing a strike on government buildings in Kyiv. This warning came from President Zelensky. He also denied any Ukrainian attack on Putin's residence. Let me remind you, yesterday, representatives of Russia's so-called foreign ministry claimed that Ukrainian drones allegedly tried to strike the Russian dictator's state residence. Was any evidence provided? Of course not. It's hard to prove something that never happened. Overall, the story developed in a rather interesting way. Russian so-called media reported that Russian air defense allegedly intercepted Ukrainian drones far from Valdai, the place of Putin's residence. So, where did the information come from that the drones were heading specifically toward Valdai? Looks like the legend was not fully thought through. Still, it works well as an excuse to intensify strikes against Ukraine. That is likely why President Zelensky warned that the terrorist state is preparing an attack on government buildings in Kyiv. I will also dare to suggest that the Kremlin invented the story about an attack on Putin's residence to disrupt the peace process. Apparently, Ukraine and the United States have managed to find common ground on most issues. And that means Russia may soon have to make painful decisions, for example, agreeing to a ceasefire. We will return to this topic right after the results of meeting between Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump in Florida.
One of the most active diplomatic days of the year.
We had a very productive meeting, and we thoroughly discussed quite a bit.
Negotiations in Ukraine have reached their final stage. After 3 hours of closed-door talks in Florida, the presidents of the US and Ukraine announced that they had made significant progress toward peace.
I believe we are in the final stages of negotiations. We'll see. Otherwise, this will go on for a long time. It will either end or it will drag on for a long time and millions more people will die. Millions. No one wants that. I've resolved 8 wars and this one is the most difficult of all. But I believe we will achieve our goal.
This time Zelensky and Trump are talking about a few weeks, after which the parameters of the peace agreement will be much clearer. Trump stated that about 90% of the terms have been agreed upon, and the security guarantees between the US and Ukraine are 100% settled. Before speaking with Zelensky, Trump called Putin. The last time the Kremlin dictator and Trump spoke on the phone was on October 16th. Putin's aide stated that the conversation took place at Trump's initiative and lasted more than an hour.
It was profoundly characterized by a mutual and strong interest in making significant progress toward a peaceful, enduring, and long-term resolution of the complex Ukrainian conflict. Donald Trump listened very carefully and attentively to the comprehensive Russian assessment of the genuine and realistic prospects for successfully reaching a mutually agreeable and lasting agreement.
Trump believes that it is already possible to say that a trilateral meeting between the US, Ukraine and Russia is quite likely in the near future, and that even Putin is seriously committed to establishing peace with Ukraine.
Putin wants this to happen. He told me this very clearly, and I believe him.
As part of the deal, a very strong security agreement was reached, in which European countries will also participate.
I believe that the European countries have really proven themselves, and they fully support this meeting in the pursuit of reaching a deal. They are all wonderful people. Donald Trump believes that Ukraine has shown great courage and inflicted enormous damage on the enemy, but it's time to put an end to the war. He even said he was ready to address the Ukrainian parliament to explain the necessity of a peace agreement. At the same time, European leaders continue to discuss further plans for restoring the security of our country. Our teams are working as planned, particularly on the financial aspects of Ukraine's recovery and on further plans for strategic progress, step by step, to end the war, ensure peace, and take all subsequent steps. We talked about the 20-point plan. Our teams have completed 90% of this work.
After the negotiations, a video conference was held with European leaders. For Ukraine, security guarantees are a key stage on the path to achieving lasting peace.
Europe is ready to continue working with Ukraine and our American partners to consolidate the progress achieved in the negotiations. The main thing in these efforts is to have ironclad security guarantees from day one.
China has also stated that it has taken note of the results of the negotiations.
China supports all efforts that contribute to a peaceful resolution of the Ukrainian crisis and hopes that the parties to the conflict will, through dialogue and negotiations, reach a fair, long-term and binding peace agreement as soon as possible.
Following the negotiations, Volodymyr Zelensky made it clear that the issue of Donbas remains highly relevant, and Ukraine's position on this matter is clear and differs from Russia's.
From the very beginning, as I said, we talked about the need to withdraw the Kyiv regime's troops from these territories and that there would be no military actions. There wouldn't have been any if they had listened to us back then.
All signals from the Kremlin, particularly their disapproval of the idea of a ceasefire to hold a referendum in Ukraine, indicate that they do not want a cessation of hostilities.
A complete transfer of control over the territory of Donbas?
Of course, that means the withdrawal of the regime's armed forces from Donbas beyond its administrative borders.
And does this apply only to Donbas or also to, say, Kherson region and Zaporizhzhia?
Here, as I have already explicitly stated, we will not fully comment on or publicly discuss the specific provisions and their implications.
The Ukrainian president added that any of the points of the peace agreement currently under discussion could be put to a referendum or submitted to the country's parliament for consideration.
We have agreed with the Americans that we will have security guarantees which will be supported by the US Congress and the Ukrainian parliament. The 20-point plan needs to be ratified by a referendum. Everyone understands that this is a historic signature we would like to make.
The Ukrainian team will continue to work on this point of the agreement with European politicians.
There is no alternative to peace. We share the same position with the Americans. The war must be ended diplomatically and pressure must be put on Russia. Otherwise, the war will continue. And if that's the case, the Americans and Europeans will continue to help us. We are defending ourselves, we are fighting, we are not the aggressor.
Ukraine manages to fight for its interests despite difficult circumstances. Well, the government still has to resolve all the issues that were discussed, and this could happen in the coming weeks.
Now about the ceasefire. It is needed, among other things, to hold a referendum and elections in Ukraine. According to President Zelensky, Ukraine needs at least 60 days of silence. So, is Russia ready to stop the killing of innocent Ukrainians? It turns out the answer is known by the US President Donald Trump. Here's what the White House leader said when asked about Putin's intentions.
Not a ceasefire, and that's one of the points that we're working on right now. No, not a ceasefire. He feels that, look, you know, they're fighting and to stop, and then if they have to start again, which is a possibility, he doesn't want to be in that position. I understand that position.
We all understand that position, Mr. President of the United States. It is a position that openly insists on continuing a war that Russia launched against Ukraine, groundlessly, arrogantly and treacherously. It is a position that ignores reality and pretends everything is going according to plan. It is said that the Kremlin still manages to manipulate Washington, but that is a topic for a separate discussion. Now, a rise in nuclear threats. Russia's so-called defense ministry claimed that the Oreshnik missile system has gone on combat duty in Belarus. It will be operated by Russian soldiers. That means Russian weapons and Russian troops, which are absolutely legitimate military targets, will be stationed on the territory of supposedly neutral Belarus. The question is, who is the real target audience of these threats? Ukraine? Or perhaps Poland, Lithuania and Latvia? What do you think? Write your thoughts in the comments. And finally, about resisting Russian occupation in Moldova. Ukraine has the ability to help Chișinău liberate so-called Transnistria from Russian occupiers. How and when? The answers in our report.
Ukraine can resolve the issue with Transnistria if it wants to, and resolve it radically. This was stated by the head of Ukrainian intelligence, Kyrylo Budanov.
They will hold back their group. Everything is fine with them there. For us, this could be more of a threat, and we can resolve this issue if we set our minds to it. Resolve it radically. But is it necessary to do this? This is where geopolitical questions begin.
But when asked whether it is worth doing, he answered in his own style. He said he would refrain from answering. Official Chișinău has repeatedly stated that they see the solution to the problem only through diplomacy. Moldovan President Maia Sandu has repeatedly insisted on a peaceful approach to resolving the situation in Transnistria. But all these attempts have been in vain. Budanov believes that it is also wrong to expect everything to resolve itself on its own.
It will not cease to exist by itself. What are the prerequisites for this? If we are talking about the Transnistria issue, whether we like it or not, then we have to compare Moldova with the Russian Federation and their respective strengths. So, do they have such strength?
They do not have the strength, which is why Moldova continues to wait. But the enclave remains a source of Russian influence and a potential threat. For Ukraine in particular, now discussions about Transnistria have intensified after a massive attack on the village of Mayaki, through which a key bridge for connecting with the southern districts of the Odessa region passes. On December 18th, the crossing was damaged. After the strikes on the bridge over Zatoka and the subsequent forced closure of the road, the route through Mayaki was the only one connecting Odessa and the southern part of the region. The distance from the city to Mayaki in a straight line is almost 40 kilometers, and the distance from Mayaki to Transnistria is about 30 kilometers, in a straight line.
They are trying in this way to cut off the entire western part of Odessa region from transport communications. And this is the access to logistics on the Danube.
The attack on the bridge caused alarm, also because the main intelligence directorate had issued a warning. Russia is urgently increasing its activity in Transnistria. Their goal is to create an additional point of tension and to divert Ukrainian forces from other directions. It doesn't sound very favorable, but here it's worth recalling the size of the contingent in the enclave. As experts say, the number of Russian volunteers in Transnistria is estimated at somewhere between 1,200 and 1,700 people.
Today, Russia does not have the capability to carry out a naval or ground operation. All of this is an information psychological operation. Of course, it is intensifying. This is all about airstrikes, missile and drone attacks. They are ongoing constantly.
But of course, it's also not something to be treated carelessly. In addition to the expected information psychological operations, there could also be infiltration by sabotage and reconnaissance groups into Ukrainian territory.
Certain provocations are possible because the FSB branch in Tiraspol is not sleeping. It is operating there. But again, how effective are they and what can they actually do? Send sabotage and reconnaissance groups into our territory? We understand perfectly well where their journey will end and how it will unfold. Of course, I think the Kremlin is considering the possibility of provocations in order to emotionally influence the local population living along the border with the so-called Transnistria. Of course, that's possible, but the response from the defense forces in this direction will be tough and appropriate.
After the previously mentioned strike on the beacons, there was a threat of a humanitarian catastrophe, but it was avoided. Following the attacks, Ukraine and Moldova quickly agreed on alternative routes of communication for the south of the Odessa region. But even that was not necessary. Ukraine managed to restore traffic on its own roads. As for Transnistria, Moldova is currently developing a plan to unify the country together with the EU and the US. The details of this plan are not being disclosed. Official Chișinău says they are working on a strategy and a roadmap for reintegration. But they can't talk about it because they're afraid it might do harm.
That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your support. Strength to Ukraine's defenders. Glory to Ukraine. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment and share. See you next time.